federal government, there is this issue that his campaign promise, remember, was technically that Mexico was going to pay for the wall, right? If this whole fight right now was about whether Mexico was going to shut down their government rather than pay for the wall, that would be relevant to his previous campaign promises on this. He never promised, I'm going to build the wall and U.S. taxpayers are going to pay for it and Democrats are going to vote for that. That wasn't the campaign promise. That wasn't even what he said he could do. But the other part of this is that he's got a new incoming White House chief of staff. I mean, Zach is on his way to burrowing into the paneling for 6 months. but John Kelly, White House chief of staff, is on his way out. Supposedly the new guy who's going to be running the White House staff as of a few days from now is this guy, Mick Mulvaney, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, former South Carolina Republican congressman. Well, it does not signify the kind of commitment and united front and true belief you need to blindly follow a fairly insane, non-rational policy insistence like the one we're having right now if you're going to have a White House chief of staff who's on record saying this about the whole idea of a wall.
Donald Trump says build a wall, deport all illegal immigrants. Rules are rules. You either play and stay or you cheat and you get deported. What challenges does this plan pose?
A bunch. I've never been in the boxcar caucus, you know, ship them home in boxcars and let the Lord sort them out. The fence is an easy thing to sell politically. It's an easy thing for someone who doesn't follow the issue very closely to say, oh, well, that'll just solve everything, build the fence. But to just say, build the darn fence and have that be the end of an immigration discussion is absurd and almost childish for someone running for president to take that simplistic view. It's easy to tell people what they want to hear, build the darn fence, vote for me. It is pablum that politicians like to feed people in order to tell people what they want to hear as they're trying to get them to vote for them.
It seems to me that Donald Trump is trying to really win the emotional support of people.
But just to appeal to somebody's emotion and say, vote for me because I'm as angry as you are, doesn't really solve the problem.
It was a 2015 interview from incoming White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney that was first posted nationally by Andrew Kaczynski at CNN. But if as the president says, he's going to get not just a shutdown, but a big, long shutdown of the federal government over this issue of not getting his wall, I think what's supposed to happen is that in the middle of that shutdown, he's going to get his new White House chief of staff, who is on record saying emphatically, while Donald Trump was running for president on the basis of saying that he wanted to build a wall, Mick Mulvaney is on the record saying that this whole idea of building a fence or wall that Donald Trump was trying to sell to people on emotional terms, he's out there on the record calling it pablum, calling it absurd and almost childish for somebody running for president to be proposing something that simplistic. He's the guy who's going to run the White House and organize everything during what the president is hoping and rooting for as to be a long shutdown, specifically over the issue of him not getting his wall. But the shutdown is going to happen. Our closest allies around the world spent the day reeling in response to the surprise protest resignation of Defense Secretary James Mattis last night. The United States Supreme Court today, in a 5-4 ruling, brushed back President Trump on one of his policy changes that was designed to make it impossible for anyone to seek asylum in this country. On a normal day, the big headline about that Supreme Court ruling would be that Chief Justice John Roberts joined the more liberal judges on the court to come up with that 5-4 majority. But today, the real headline out of that ruling, other than the ruling itself, is that liberal Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg had to cast that vote just before she went into the hospital for surgery today. She is 85 years old. We will have more on that coming up. But on days like this, when it feels like the foundations are a little shaky, I firmly believe we can take comfort in the little things, right? Like a nutshellable, case study style, self-dealing, self-enrichment, public corruption scam, old school style, involving the Deputy White House Chief of Staff. That makes sense, right? I know how that ends. In terms of order and the rule of law and things proceeding one foot in front of the other, in terms of how our government operates, you should also know that even if the government does shut down for an extended period starting tonight, law enforcement doesn't shut down. At the federal level, law enforcement is considered a critical and essential function. You should also know that as a specific matter, the special counsel's office and within the Justice Department, Robert Mueller and his prosecutors, their office will also not shut down in a federal government shutdown. There's been a whole bunch of interesting court filings related to the Mueller probe today. I will tell you, we're going to get to that a little bit later on this hour, too, including the lifting of the gag order in the Maria Butina case. I am slightly obsessed with that case and that element of it. We will have more on that coming up. But the Mueller investigation, the special counsel's office, again, will not shut down in the shutdown. Let us also take comfort in buffeting times like this, in the clarifying, orderly science of good reporting and the clear explication of even complex processes. And so tonight we're going to try to figure out a lot of the most complex stuff that's going on, including us starting with a live report from Capitol Hill on what is now the impending, I believe it's the third government shutdown of the Donald Trump presidency. We're going to go live to Capitol Hill to try to understand how long this shutdown is likely to last right after this. News. This is exclusive to us.
NBC News is out today with some exclusive new reporting.
You are about to hear the phrase wall of cheese. Fair warning. As we hurtle toward tonight's shutdown of the federal government of the United States, with Congress and the White House under unified Republican control, nevertheless unable to find a way to keep the government funded and open, Republicans in the House Rules Committee scheduled an emergency meeting tonight. And you might expect that in circumstances like this, right? This is the time for emergency meetings when we are heading toward a government shutdown. Except their emergency meeting ahead of tonight's shutdown was an emergency meeting, all hands on deck, about cheese. Specifically, they met to consider a bill called the CURD Act, C-U-R-D. If you want to know the specifics, the CURD Act would apparently allow certain types of cheese to be labeled as natural, even if they contain artificial ingredients or synthetic substances. That's the CURD Act. But if you want to know why this CURD Act was the cause for a cheese emergency meeting in Congress while the government was in the process of shutting down tonight, well, in that instance, you have a friend in Democratic Congressman Jim McGovern.
This is an emergency meeting that we're having here, and I've seen some surreal things around this place, but this is really something. Vital parts of our government are about to shut down in just a few hours, and the Republicans have called an emergency meeting on cheese. I mean, has anybody considered how ridiculous this is or how bad the optics are as the American people are watching what's going on here? By all means, if you think the most important thing we have to discuss right now is cheese, I'll let you have at it.
This committee has the awesome responsibility of taking legislation that is important to this body. This passed the United States Senate. This is important to small business. This is important, an important product, an important distinction, an important bill for many small businesses, notwithstanding in Wisconsin or perhaps other places, that produce cheese. And for us to think that this is not an important small business issue, consumer issue, is just as important, and it would be to the people that are trying to have the important provisions made here, as even the largest bill.
My point is that, our government is about to shut down at midnight tonight. And the Senate did do its work. The fact that we're having an emergency meeting, not on that, but on cheese, I just find to be, it'd be funny if it wasn't so tragic.
I've got a newspaper that I would like to enter into the record. I'm not